Born to give her life for her family's bright future, little Leslie has always lived only to make her sister feel good. After an unsuccessful attempt to sacrifice for magic, the girl decided to knock on the door of the Princess of Monsters to adopt her. But so far, everything has gone differently. Everyone just stood there and watched what was happening to the girl, and the man was even determined to have her sharpened as soon as possible. She tried with all her might to break free and begged them not to do what they were going to do to her. Even though the man felt sorry for Leslie, he had to follow the order. He was dragging her along, and she was begging for salvation, because she knew for sure that she did not want to die. No matter how she appealed to her family and father, no one wanted to hear her. For her, it was really not clear what she had done to be treated this way. The man pushed the defenseless girl with a stick, emphasizing that her purpose was to die for her sister. She could not believe that this was how she could die, even though she did not want to. Immediately, she began to hear different sounds, voices that emphasized that she had to save herself, that she had to try to survive with all her might. Suddenly, everyone around her heard the sound of breaking glass. Leslie flew out of the window like a doll. Each time, the father tried to punish the girl and even leave her without food, and it was all because she had argued with her sister. And her mother punished her because Leslie answered the questions incorrectly and did not study the topic that the tutor asked. Even her sister believed that Leslie was constantly embarrassing her and was ashamed to even appear in public. Every time Leslie watched her family, she couldn't understand why she was treated this way, because everyone treated her sister with love. But Leslie had a very difficult childhood. She was constantly being told what she was going to eat and what she was supposed to wear, and she was told that she had to be beautiful. When she looked in the mirror, she dreamed that one day she would be looked at with the same tenderness as her sister. But it turned out quite differently, and she probably shouldn't have hoped for it. But in those moments, she realized that she really wanted to live. As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw her bandaged hands in front of her, but she realized that she had managed to survive. She was in great pain not only physically, but also because no one had ever considered her part of the family. At that moment, she was very scared, but she made a decision that everything would be different for her from that moment on. She wanted to give up her dreams of being loved. But she realized that in the Empire, every nation had divine power or magic. She looked at her hands and did not understand what was wrong with them. Although she knew that many years had passed since the last child with such power had been born in the prince's family. Since she had a lot of questions, she decided that she might be able to find all the answers in the library. But first she needed a force, and it had to be a force that could protect her. The laws of the Empire stressed that every family had to support their child. Leslie was only 6 years away from coming of age, so if she was ready to run away at that time, she would definitely be returned. And then she was not at all sure that she could have been left alive, so she had to come up with something. The girl decided to leave that dark room and walk around a bit and think about what to do next. Every time, her mother would yell that she shouldn't have been walking around those rooms, because she thought she was disgusting. While everyone around her considered her to be like moss growing in a dark place, her sister was considered to be like the rays of the sun. Each time she was put in front of a mirror and they tried to emphasize that she was just a useless child and needed to live only for her sister. So now, from that moment on, she decided that she would neither talk to them nor listen to them anymore, but she still had to hold on somehow. Meanwhile, the father was constantly feeling sorry for his other daughter and asked that she should wait a little longer since it was because of her sister that the powers of magic could not yet awaken in her. The girl knew that if the sacrifice was successful, she would be able to use all her abilities to the fullest. Ellie was very embarrassed because she was afraid of what people might think of her if she was not able to use her powers properly. While the parents were trying to comfort one daughter, the other stood at the door and listened to everything. She was very unhappy to hear that she was born for the benefit of her sister. If Ellie hadn't awakened her powers, she could have easily stayed at the Imperial Palace, but she had to have another child to transfer all her magic to her sister's body. Her parents emphasized that she was the true part of their family, as she had golden hair and green eyes, while her younger sister looked like an old woman. She simply could not believe that everything was actually planned. Her life, her death, and even her birth. Everything that happened in her life was only for Ellie's sake. It was just scary to believe that this girl was going to be burned by her entire family so that the magic could be passed on to Ella. It was then that she decided she had to make a quick decision. In the morning, she quickly cleaned herself up and decided to leave the house, but of course her father noticed. As usual, he began to insult the child, but this time she was not silent at all and began to answer. She now knew that if she was not there, they would all be in a difficult situation. The man decided that she had become so insolent because she had survived, and even decided that she needed to be beaten a little for such behavior. She no longer wanted to tolerate such insults and ordered him to cling to the hearth and give birth to everything for his Ellie if he wanted to. As soon as he tried to pounce on the girl and detain her, she responded with her own magic, which he did not expect at all. Despite the fact that it was her sister's carriage, she did not want to listen to anyone and ordered that she be taken to the church immediately. When the servant grabbed her arm, she also did not remain silent and immediately began to shout at him. She even wanted to know where the man had learned such manners and how he dared to raise his hand to a lady like her. For everyone, it was a real miracle that the girl began to respond to everyone around her like that, because a few days ago she could not even say a single word. Immediately after she scolded him, he began to bow to her and apologize for his actions. And then she didn't want anyone to help her and decided that she could manage the carriage and get to the church just fine on her own. Locked in the carriage, she looked at her hands and felt as if she had given someone a good la pasa, and decided that she definitely did not need to worry about people who treated her like that. And now she could not even think what they would all do without her in the future. Because that very day she decided to meet with the Princess of Monsters, Princess Salvatore. The house was actually richer than the imperial family and existed even before the formation of the empire. People believed that the ancestors of their family were monsters, because no one could surpass their strength. The princesses were famous for their strength and were the first to fight in every battle. Even the girl who lived in confinement knew about it, namely that the princess was the first to break into the battlefield and cut off the king's head with her bare hands. But since the princess had hidden herself from prying eyes, there were only 1 or 2 legends about her. Everyone also heard that her 2 sons had also inherited their mother's incredible strength. As soon as she began to imagine the power of the princess and the power of her children, she felt a fever run through her body, as she did not know whether she would be able to persuade the woman to do what she had planned. But even if he meets a person who is ready to tear off his head with his bare hands, he is still not a monster who throws his child alive into the fire. The road quickly ended and they arrived at the temple where she needed to go. She was even surprised that the footman held out his hand to her as she got out of the carriage. Then she even decided that she would have to learn some manners, the etiquette of a real lady, not a maid. Meanwhile, the girl heard from other ladies that many people had come to congratulate the princess that day, but for some reason she did not show up. She knew that the princess was famous for never receiving guests, but despite this, she always attended meetings on the island. But she didn't know when that meeting might be, whether in a month or 2, and her next sacrifice would be in 6 months. In the meantime, she turned to a woman in the church and wanted to get all the materials related to the Sperado family. All the family records were kept there. They contained all the information about the deaths within the family, and there must have been a reason why the Sperado family wanted to sacrifice her. The woman could not just give that book to the girl, because she had to confirm that she was a member of that family. I had to show her at least something with the stamp of her family's coat of arms, and only then could she help me find that precious book. But she was never even allowed to look up at something like the stamp of the coat of arms, so she had no idea what it looked like. Then the girl decided to take her outside and show her what kind of carriage she had come in, hoping that it could help her a lot. After she saw it all, she was sure that the child was from that family, but she had always heard that the girl was not feeling well. But in order not to waste time, she took her to the library where all the important records were, but the latter were written in the language of that empire. Leslie was not worried at all, as she could read fluently and definitely did not need an interpreter. The woman was very surprised, because this language was taught only in the academy, and she was so young that she could already read it. In her entire life, it was the first time she had ever heard praise in her direction. She knew that while her sister was busy being a princess, Leslie was studying hard, and so it turned out that it was not in vain. Then she immediately began to read and see who had died at such an early age. If the stories about the sacrifices were true, then there must have been many people who had died in their youth. She read that the last person who had black magic was born more than 100 years ago, which meant that she had to check what had happened before. It was just horrible. Everyone she read about died at an early age before they reached their majority. Some died from a fall, others from drowning or an unknown disease. The most important thing for her was that all those who died also had brothers or sisters. Not even all the children were buried as they should have been. So she now knew for sure that alive or dead, she would always be disadvantaged. Now Leslie knew for sure that she had to run away from that family, and all those voices she heard were the voices of those children who died for someone. The poor children were held hostage by the fire, but screamed that Leslie had to break free and save herself. At that moment, she was overcome with anger that she was the one who was born with such strong magic, but all the children who were sacrificed had been accumulating their anger for decades. Then, even through her tears, she decided to take revenge for all of them and make sure that nothing would be left of the Sperato family at all. She did not want to see this anymore, and so she knew that she had to go to the princess as soon as possible and do everything to get her accepted. Suddenly, she slipped and fell a little, but at that moment a very nice young man helped her up who was happy that the stranger had not been hurt. He even offered me a napkin and did not expect any gratitude for his act because the floor was very slippery, so I had to be very careful. As soon as Leslie returned home, her sister immediately attacked her, but it is not clear why. When she came closer to her sister, she started to tell her something, but the girl did not immediately understand why she should listen to it. In the meantime, people also wasted no time and decided to start gathering at the door to meet the guests who were to come to their homes. The emperor's son was also there, but the girls in front of him wanted to discuss their personal relationships, which were very important to them. Then the girl began to emphasize that she became very nervous when she got into the carriage and realized that something had gone wrong. After their dialogue did not go well, they still wanted to discuss their events, and the man and his men continued to watch. Later, when their dialogue still did not work out, she began to kneel down and accuse the little girl of doing the wrong thing in the situation. Lowering her head, the beauty did not want to say a word to her rival, but she realized that this behavior was done on purpose. Recalling all those events, she knew how bad people were sometimes, especially those who worked for the marquee. Looking at the girl better, she began to realize that all the people who came from wealthy families were usually bad people who did not realize what they were doing at that moment. At the end of the dialogue, the woman concluded that the girl was just supposed to talk to her politely and not say anything negative, but it turned out to be the opposite. In front of everyone, they decided to hug each other so that no one would suspect that a small conflict had arisen between them, but no one sincerely intended to do so. Looking into the eyes of her loved one, she concluded that she behaved completely differently in public so that no one would pay attention to her. The girl was not going to give up on her rival, so she decided that she would pretend that nothing had happened, even though she felt strange things inside. Finally, she leaned over and finally told her sister some very unpleasant things, after which she walked around with a bewildered face for quite some time. Now she was 100% convinced that she didn't need love from such a bad person at all, so she was sure she had done the right thing. But before she could get far away from her, she violently grabbed her by the shoulder and told her not to try to run away from her. A few minutes later, she went to her room to rest for a while, but the worker emphasized that she needed help. Then the woman said that the prince began to misunderstand everything, and the girl had to tell him the whole situation in order not to make a bad person out of herself. After she was not going to do anything, the worker decided to convince the girl to do everything as she should. Later, a worker came to her and they started talking about what the girl had said to her in private, and then the lady really wanted to hear the answer to her question. But she was not going to respond to all those words, so the worker kept holding her hand and wanted her to finally start obeying her. For this act, she wanted the girl to get out of bed as soon as possible and go apologize to the lady who was waiting for those words. Addressing the lady, she repeatedly emphasized that she would not do it, because she was 100% convinced that she was not to blame for the situation. She began to convince the worker that she had never taken anyone else's and reminded her that she was the most injured of all those who had talked to the girl. The woman often recalled the events when a bad family committed a very strong betrayal against her, because now she had severe burns on her hand. At first, the worker could not believe such words and did not know whether she could trust the girl, but she realized that they came from somewhere. Looking at the worker, she began to realize that she would most likely trust her now, despite the fact that they did not have the warm relationship they had always had. After she finally took the girl's side, the worker suggested that she go to the marquis and tell him the bitter truth that everyone had been keeping quiet about. The girl liked the idea, but she wasn't going to go there alone, so she decided to go back to bed and think it over. Later, when the girl turned her back on her, the worker was not going to tolerate such an act from her either, so she decided to quickly approach her and explain everything. She didn't want to pay attention to all those words because she saw how badly the worker was behaving at times. After a while, another person came to their room, and then the two ladies simply could not believe that they had seen this woman with their own eyes. Later, she made sure that the worker who had been spending a lot of time in the ladies' room left so that they could discuss everything in private. As usual, she began to put moral pressure on the girl and emphasized that she sometimes did not control her strength, and it was very bad. The woman began to accuse the girl of taking away her special magic that belonged only to ladies and was supposed to help her in difficult situations. A second later, she began to describe her beautiful appearance, which she considered very beautiful in this palace. In response, the girl did not want to say anything at all, but later, not very pleasant words began to fly in her direction, and at times even insults about her appearance. With each passing second, she began to realize how the girl's beauty was actually made, as she had many workers working for her to help her with it. In the end, the girl emphasized that if the lady lived in her house for at least 6 months, her condition would deteriorate twice as much. When she turned to her, she thought that she was an uneducated person because she did not realize that she could tell the marquee everything. She wasn't going to listen to all the woman's words, so in a second she was at the door and wanted to tell everyone how it really was. The girl began to emphasize clearly that before she changed her mind, she had a chance to leave the area and forget everything. When she wanted to finally regain her strength to eat, she emphasized that she did not like the food her workers brought, so she asked for a replacement. The women who worked for the lady were shocked and did not know how to please her because she constantly disliked something in their dishes. But after a while they managed to find normal food, and then the girl regained her strength and was happy. A lady who played an important role in this house was shocked to see a woman who had finally woken up and started eating again. The two heroines came together, and one of them began to complain a lot about the girl's behavior, but no one was going to listen to her because the beauty already wanted to leave the area. The worker, who was doing his job normally, asked where exactly he needed to take the girl because he was already a little confused about her needs. When he offered to return home to discuss everything with the management, she refused. As soon as they arrived at their destination, the girl asked the worker to tell the princess that they had already arrived. And the woman who ruled this house was surprised to hear such news, although she understood that this could happen. At first, she wanted to discuss everything personally with the worker who was nearby, and then the person wanted to know how old the child was who had just arrived at her house. She was stunned to learn that the girl did come from such a family, and then the boss did not know how to talk to her properly. The beauty recalled all the events that had happened in her life in the past, although it was very painful for her to remember it all. The employee standing next to her wanted to ask the director what she wanted to do, but she never heard a clear answer, because no one knew what to do. She was very polite to her main person, so she decided to let her make the decision personally. The girl did not want to stay in one place, even though the worker kept emphasizing that they should go home because the woman could punish them. After a few seconds, she clearly emphasized that she had come a long way and did not want to deviate from her plan, but the worker decided to leave as soon as possible. In the end, he emphasized that he wanted to stop the girl very much, but she did not listen to him and was not going to listen to all this. The girl continued to stand under the gate and console herself with the news that sooner or later the gate would finally be opened for her to enter. The woman, in turn, realized that at that moment she had a lot of different work to do as soon as possible, because people were waiting for answers to their questions. After a while, she realized that she needed a vacation to somehow switch from the same type of work every day. The girl, in turn, continued to stand still because she did not want to deviate from her plan for which she had traveled such a long way. Later, the worker reported that the girl continued to stand, but the woman said she wanted to have dinner. After some time, she finally managed to get her way and was finally allowed into the house. And the first thing the workers decided to do was to bring her some tea to warm her up. The woman emphasized that she had put a little sugar in the tea because she knew that it would help her recover faster. The girl was very grateful. But before she could even take a sip of the delicious warm tea, it had already fallen to the floor because she was too inattentive. The first thing she did was to apologize profusely and emphasize that she had to clean up quickly to avoid any inconvenience. But the worker simply reassured her, emphasizing that there was nothing wrong with the fact that she simply did not see the glass. As soon as she touched the girl's hands, she realized how cold they were. Then she realized she had to do something to help. The first thing the worker did was to bring the girl a warm blanket, because in this way she could restore her normal body temperature faster. At first, she just couldn't believe that she was treated so well, and meanwhile the worker said she wanted to bring a new cup of tea. After a while, a woman came in and was very eager to see her new guest who had been standing outside the door waiting for the door to be opened. At first, she was very surprised because she noticed that the woman was very tall, even taller than some men. As soon as the woman saw the young lady with her own eyes, she was pleasantly surprised at how beautiful she looked, as if she were a picture. Only after some time did she realize that it was not an employee who was with her all this time, but a woman named Jenna who wanted to help her sincerely. Then she laughed a little because she didn't know that the girl had such assumptions, but no one wanted to be offended by her because they wanted to talk together. Now that all their misunderstandings have simply disappeared, they decided to talk to each other in person to understand why the girl came here. As it turned out, the head of this large house found out about the real reason and decided to see this case through because she wanted to complete this task as soon as possible. First, she addressed the princess and clearly emphasized that she had a very important request for her, for which she had come here. The worker realized that at that moment she had to leave the place as quickly as possible because they were having a personal conversation in which she should not have participated. Then the girl said very strange words to the woman, namely, she wanted the manager to adopt her as a real daughter. She continued to ask for such an important event for her because she was living in not very good conditions and wanted to get out of them as soon as possible. She had never heard such a strange request and wanted to know why she had to do this for a girl, since there were many different children in the world. Then the beauty began to tell her that if she fulfilled the lady's request, which she asked for so much, she would be able to get what she had wanted for so long. She had never had the opportunity to work with such great strength, but she was convinced that if a girl did this for her, it would change her life. After she said that, she started laughing out loud because she was convinced that the girl did not know what she was dreaming about. Recalling her past life, she began to tell the woman what it really was like and why she tried so hard to get out of it. After this story, the little lady continued to look clearly into the woman's eyes to get at least some answer to her long-awaited question. She also hoped that the woman would be able to protect her, at least until she grew up and was able to cope with the difficult situations that often happened to her. At first, the manager did not take all these words seriously, but later she began to look at the girl with a completely different perspective. She continued to talk about how she really wanted to grow up and have her own family that could help her change her life. In the end, she emphasized again that she really wanted this family to accept her and give her at least some chance for her future. After hearing everything, the girl decided to tell the truth about what she was feeling inside and answer the girl's questions. The girl knew that this woman came from a royal family, so she was convinced that she could be helped in difficult situations if they occurred. She in turn continued to look at the girl clearly and wanted to understand her honest intentions, but no one answered this question. After a while, the woman realized that it would be nice if such a good child was with her and could make her feel sorry for him at times. She decided to talk to the girl better to understand that she had at least heard some stories about her in the old days. The little girl did not expect such a question at all, and then she noticed with her own eyes what the woman's face really looked like because she always wore a mask. The lady began to tell her story of how she had received such a severe burn that she had to wear this mask all the time, and the little girl listened very attentively. She did not know how she should react to all this, so she decided that she would just keep silent because she could have offended the woman with some of her words. Then she noticed how angry the child was and began to worry about her, but the woman began to tell her that she no longer felt any pain. After a while, when she got up from her couch, she realized that she had made a big mistake and wanted to correct it as soon as possible. Later, the woman noticed that the girl was really upset, so she wanted to cheer her up and offered to have lunch together. But before they could enjoy the wonderful food, which was very tasty in that house, they saw with their own eyes a very tall man. Then he decided to go to the head of the institution and asked her what new people he didn't know about. She decided that she would just keep quiet because she knew how handsome the man was and wanted to make a good impression on him. Then the woman noticed how shy the girl was and emphasized that now it would be her older brother who would help her with all her whims. The man did not claim this role at all, but he understood that he had to follow all the instructions she gave him. At first, he decided to tell his girlfriend his name so that she would know how to address him, but the name turned out to be very complicated. The workers, who were watching everything carefully, just watched how their dialogue would continue to unfold, which was gaining momentum with each passing second. The first thing the girl decided to do was to introduce herself properly to the man who had just entered their room. He, in turn, immediately began to pay attention to this because he realized that not everyone had such well-mannered actions as the girl did. First, he asked the head of the institution how old the girl he had just seen for the first time in his life was. She did not expect such a question and did not really want to answer it, So she decided to just keep quiet and look into her husband's eyes. But when she found out that he already knew the answer to this question, she was very surprised and could not contain her emotions. So her husband saw it right away. The woman, in turn, just continued to eat her meal and watch everything, and did not think that the girl would have such a strange reaction. When she realized that the man didn't really know the truth of the matter, she decided to come up and emphasize that she had already turned 12 this year. Then she just started laughing out loud at the little lady who didn't tell the whole truth at first, but the woman just loved it. After a while, the woman asked the girl to come to her personally because she wanted to treat her to something, because she saw how thin she was. At first, the lady decided to apologize for the fact that her child did not understand any of the words she had tried to convey to him as best she could. Having moved a little further away, the man wanted to analyze the situation himself and make a conclusion about the girl. But at first he could not say anything bad about her because she was a child. The girl, in turn, was incredibly happy to have met such a handsome guy and now realized that she had never met anyone before. After a while, she asked the child if she didn't want to go home because she realized that the marquee might have already been looking for her. When she realized that the child was already quite independent, she offered her to spend the night at her house, as there was enough space for everyone. He hadn't expected such unexpected news at all, but he couldn't say anything because he wasn't the manager. When she saw that the girl was very embarrassed at the moment, the woman decided to calm her down and emphasized that she had done nothing wrong to them. The workers, in turn, tried to do their job well, and everyone tried to spend as much time as possible with the girl, who was very polite. Looking at her hands, she realized that they had been looking strange lately, but she didn't really want to tell anyone about it. The girl immediately decided to go to bed and analyze everything and realized that the stranger had accepted her very warmly, in spite of everything. But still, she realized that she did not need to lose her vigilance, and so even before going to bed, she carefully examined everything. After some time, the man decided to go to the woman in person to discuss some details with her, but she did not know what he wanted to discuss. Their dialogue began very negatively, but later began to improve, but the woman still did not understand why her husband was so unhappy. He understood that they had to capture one small village that played an important role in the area, but for some reason his wife prioritized differently. She has always paid attention to children for a long time because they were very pleasant creatures who cheered her up every time. Meanwhile, a new day had already come, and the worker wanted to know what kind of ribbon the girl wanted to wear on her head that day. At times, she was not sure how to answer questions because she was not used to having so much attention and so many choices in everything. At times, the workers also began to notice how anxious the little girl was, unable to decide what she wanted to wear or eat. After a while, the lady worker didn't like the choice of the ribbon because she saw that a blue ribbon would have gone better with this hairstyle, but she wanted a green one. When she finally had a chance to look in the mirror after a while, she saw how beautiful she looked with this ribbon that complemented her look. In the meantime, she continued to spend her free time enjoying the food prepared by the workers who worked for her. The next morning, she wanted to know how the girl was feeling first thing, because last night she was quite tired after such a busy day. The first thing she did was to thank the woman for everything she had done for her, while the workers watched from the doorway. The girl was surprised to learn that there were no etiquette rules in their home at all, and they could eat as much as they wanted and whatever they wanted. Then she wanted to learn some more rules about their family, because she realized that if she wanted to live here for a long time, she had to know everything perfectly well. At first, she really liked how delicious the food that had just been prepared for her tasted, and the girl, in turn, watched everything. After they had talked for a long time, the woman wanted to know if the girl still wanted to talk to her after some time had passed. She also learned that Leslie was a very intelligent person with whom it was interesting to communicate, and she liked the way they heard each other. She often emphasized that she didn't need to thank her at all, because the beauty did it all on her own free will, and she also liked pleasing such a good person. Despite all this, she still needed to do some work because she had a lot of paperwork to sort through. When she realized that she needed to wait a bit for the girl to talk to her, she wanted to know how long it was going to take. When she learned that it would take about a month to process the documents, she was shocked because she thought it was a quick and easy process. But now she has clearly decided that she wants to stay here for the rest of her life because her previous family did not treat her very well. Later, she decided that Leslie would stay in this family because the girl's attitude was much better than the last time. After that, the woman asked the lady not to tell anyone about it because it was still their personal secret. The girl realized that she would now be part of the family, and had to follow all the rules they dictated to her because she did not want to let them down. Over time, their conversations began to turn to the Rickards, a family that was very well respected in their area, but she had never heard of them before. The woman always tried to emphasize that under no circumstances should the girl tell anyone anything, because this information was classified and no one was supposed to know about it. As she bent her head over her plate, she realized that she really had a big responsibility now, and she could not let her family down. But when she saw in the girl's eyes that she was very worried, the woman asked her not to worry in any way. Looking at a person who was already close to her, she began to feel real support that she had never seen before in her life. After that, they continued to talk about their lives, and every minute they were much more interested in talking because they were learning more and more about themselves. When they finally finished their conversation, the woman decided to approach the man and ask him if he had a good early practice. The son should also try to always thank his mother, because she played a big role in his life and helped him build at least some kind of career. But after he finished all his treatments, he wanted to know more about the girl who would now live in their home. The woman said that she was a little worried about the marquee, who at any moment could make their lives go in a different direction. Then the son made it clear that he would make sure that nothing would happen to his family because he valued his family members who were always there for him. As soon as she closed the door, the woman immediately asked where the child had been for so long and did not get in touch at all. When the woman did not hear the answer to her question, she quickly picked up the little beauty and decided that she would have to talk to her differently now. But now that she knew that she had support, she was not going to live in another family because she knew what the attitude was like here compared to the other family. As soon as she arrived at her previous family, all the residents of the house immediately recognized that the girl was visiting them again. At first, the mother, who was in charge, did not understand why her daughter was screaming so much, but she decided to quickly complain about the new girl. After talking, she again began to be very aggressive towards the child who had recently arrived, but the woman tried not to give in to it. After this conversation, she decided that she needed to punish the new girl, but she did not understand why she was treated in such a way. A second later, she was again very strongly touched by her hair, which the woman even pulled out a little during the conflict. Later, the lady was alone with her thoughts and was incredibly honest and wanted this family to disappear from her life as soon as possible. She continued to lie on the cot and pray that all the horror that was happening in her life would end as soon as possible and that everything would stabilize. The mother, in turn, decided to go to her husband to discuss all these matters with him and decide what to do with their child. He was not happy about these events, so he decided to at least somehow calm the woman down, but in the moment, the woman was not counting on such words. After listening to all the stories, at first the man refused to believe what he heard, but later he was given really true arguments. He had a hunch that magic was to blame for all this, as it had a negative effect on the children, including the girl who changed her behavior very dramatically. Recalling past events, he knew how to fix it because he was a well-read man who knew what to do. But he also knew that if the power was fully awakened, it would be quite difficult to stop it, so he decided to come up with a plan immediately. The wedding, which was to take place soon, could have a negative impact on all these events, so he decided to stop it. A second later, when he kicked the table very hard, he noticed a strange book lying on the floor, so he decided to pick it up. After a short while, he realized that these were some strange notes that he wanted to read as soon as possible to find out what exactly they were about. Without learning anything new, the man decided that he had to end it all as soon as possible, and meanwhile the girl was choosing a new dress. Although she did not really want to stay in this house, the workers treated her well and wanted to help. Despite the fact that there were also normal people in this house, she decided that she would not trust anyone, because it only made her feel worse. After a few minutes, when the worker still did not want to leave her room, the girl began to scream and emphasize that she was tired and wanted to rest. And then she said that in fact the marquee wanted to see the woman very much, and after that she no longer wanted to rest. At that moment, she even realized that maybe she should have put on a dress and still gone and talked to her husband about a personal topic. But later she finally refused the offer, and this made the woman even more angry because she wanted the girl to meet her halfway. Later, she no longer had the strength to argue with the worker who continued to stand over her and still demand that she go to the conversation. Another woman at the time was very angry at the behavior of the beauty who did not obey her workers at all and did not give them peace in their home. After the man saw what was happening at that moment, he thought it was unacceptable on the part of the girl because she started grabbing her sister's hair. The girl did not want to lose her father's authority, so she began to apologize for her actions and emphasize that it was just an accident. When her words did not affect the situation at all, she continued to beg him to forgive her and understand everything correctly. But when he decided to talk to another person in person, it made his sister even angrier, and then she didn't know what to do. After that moment, my father began to behave completely differently and shout at another person to whom he had always been very good. The girl had never expected to be treated in such a way, so she did not know how to react and began to scream a lot. Addressing Leslie, he emphasized that she should never worry about anything because her father was always there to help her. Looking at his child, he realized that he had to do everything he could to make sure that she was a happy person who knew that she had some kind of support at home. Now, she did not know how she should react to her father because he really began to treat her in a completely different way and do things to her that he had never done before. After that, he still continued to emphasize that he was very sorry for his bad behavior towards the girl who was often in their family. But now, looking at her family, she didn't know if she needed to forgive any of them, because after a while the attitude could be the same again. With her head down, she did not know how to react to such stressful situations. As soon as she was alone, a woman approached her and started pushing the girl and wanted to know what she hadn't told the man who started defending her. When she did not hear an answer to her question, the angry woman simply walked in the other direction to talk to the employees who had heard everything. The worker, who had always been by her husband's side, began to emphasize that she was doing all her work, but it was still not enough for him. The man's main complaint was that she did not make the girl think very well of him and respect him for his actions. He recalled all the past events in the girl's life and knew that it was very difficult for her at times, so he wanted to support her. My husband used to be incredibly cruel, because even when their house was in flames, he did not feel sorry for the girl who was trying to get out of the fire. He also noticed that she had been acting very strangely lately, so he decided that he needed to change his attitude. A few minutes later, another officer approached him and said that the marquee wanted to talk to the man in person. He didn't know how to react to this, because he had no desire to talk to the kind of people he had recently seen with his own eyes. But at that moment, the employee kept standing there and reminding him that the man needed to make a decision. The girl, in turn, began to eat something early in the morning to make the time pass as quickly as possible because she was very eager to get to the temple. The worker, who continued to perform her duties, asked the little person if she really wanted to move away from them. As soon as she was in the carriage, she felt how calm she immediately became because now she was more comfortable without the marquee. Analyzing all these events, she could not understand how she had been in such terrible conditions for about 12 years and how she had to endure it all. Meanwhile, the man was left alone with the girls who kept looking at him with their eyes but could not understand anything. He tried to control the whole situation with his movements and asked the workers to bring them home as soon as possible. After a while, the woman could no longer contain her emotions and began to shout at her husband very loudly, as she was convinced that he was very much to blame for the situation. He, in turn, denied all these bad words in his direction, but the girl sitting next to the woman did not dare to say anything. She just tried to keep her smile on her face and show that nothing had happened. In her mind, she was only hoping that this month would fly by very quickly, because she wanted to return to her family as soon as possible. After a while, she began to realize that the whole road they were traveling on led to the temple itself. Later, she got the idea to just get out of the carriage, but unfortunately, as soon as she tried to do so, the doors were completely closed. A second later, when she turned her head in the other direction, she noticed that the carriage was again on fire, and then she did not know what she had to do. It didn't take long for the fire to rise up in the room, and now she didn't know where to go to avoid getting some terrible burns. Looking at this whole situation, she began to recall her past life, where there were very similar situations, and now she knew what she had to do. Unfortunately, the only way she could see at that moment was to stand closer to the door and bend down to breathe less smoke. After a while, she noticed a very strange silhouette offering her a hand and wanting to help her in this situation. Opening her eyes better, the beauty noticed that it was a man who politely extended his hand to her and offered his help. At first, she didn't count on it at all, but after a while, the flames finally went out and they were in a safe place. Recalling past events, they discussed what problems could happen in the future and how they could be prevented. The man was always a good person and tried to help everyone who didn't deserve it very much. After a while, he wanted to know whose carriage it was and how the girl ended up there, but meanwhile she continued to sit in his arms. People who were looking at the carriage noticed that after a few minutes there was almost nothing left of it, and then they did not know what to do next. After a while, the workers approached him and thanked him very much for saving their woman. After this terrible situation, they asked the man to give them back their child, who belonged only to them and had nothing to do with the man. But after such a terrible situation, he was not going to do it. So he quickly grabbed one of them by the throat and began to emphasize that he would not give the child to anyone. No one in their company expected the man to be so aggressive and to defend the woman so strongly. They began to justify their actions and emphasize that they had nothing to do with the fact that the carriage started to burn so quickly. But they were even more proclaimed when the man was not going to listen to all their slander. Fortunately, he had his own support, which was ready to take the man's side at any time and fight to the end. After he heard very terrible words in his direction, the young man asked if they were ready to take responsibility for them. But it didn't take long for them to realize that they had to leave the area, and the man decided that they had to leave the forest as well. To begin with, the man realized that he had to take the girl to a special place where no one would disturb her. The man continued to hold her in his arms and realized that the captain of their team knew this child very well. As soon as she woke up, she realized that it was just a terrible dream she had just had in the middle of the night. When she opened her eyes better, she saw a woman approaching Leslie and asking if she was awake and what was wrong. As it turned out, the woman later said that it was not a dream, and her son really managed to help the girl in such a difficult situation. She had not expected to hear such news in her direction, but now she simply decided to accept the situation, after she drank the special herbs that the woman brought her. Then the girl decided to go to bed again, and the beauty was sure that she would sleep better. After a while, she asked the girl to start calming down because she was now completely safe. The woman decided that she would sit next to the girl for a few minutes because she saw how serious her condition was. But fortunately, it didn't take long for the woman to touch the beauty's face and begin to slowly fall asleep. After a while, the woman came to her husband to ask if he had really managed to deal with the gang of pagans on his own. Now the woman was sure that the marquee had really crossed the line they had agreed on, and this could become a big problem for her in the future. The woman tried to control everything, but at times she did not succeed, so she was always looking for some kind of support. She also noticed that there hadn't been many deaths in their palace lately, which made her very happy, but at times she still didn't know what to do. Meanwhile, the girl was calmly walking around her house and noticed a strange thing. She was convinced that she had made the right choice, despite the fact that the leaders of the institution were a bit against it. The beauty often called the knights who protected her real good workers, but at times they set her up and she did not like it very much. The house she was staying in at the moment was much more comfortable than hers, so she didn't want to leave it under any circumstances. At times, her work helped her a lot because she could not control her emotions, which often went beyond the limits. The woman tried to control her emotions because she knew she had a competitor whom she had to defeat anyway. The worker decided to approach Miss Elia to ask what happened to her, because he constantly saw that she was not finding a place to live. When he didn't hear an answer to his question, he decided to tell the information that a princess wanted to meet a girl, but she didn't count on it. Meanwhile, the other person was already waiting for this meeting because he realized that this issue needed to be resolved as soon as possible. After bowing, she decided to greet the princess very nicely because she knew that she was a very important person. As soon as the girl introduced herself, she said she was only 15 years old and could not believe why the woman was so tall. At the beginning, she immediately saw how shy the stranger was to talk to her, but she didn't want such a barrier between them. The workers continued to do their work normally and endure whatever the princess wanted. He decided to first tell us about his carriage, which personally came to this palace to fulfill the task. When she heard all this news, she was not very happy with what she heard, but she realized that at that moment, she had no other choice. Raising a glass of tea, she asked if the beautiful girl in her family was really the daughter of such a man. He made a clear decision that he would not lie and then confirmed the woman's words and emphasized that it was his child, but he wanted the woman to take it correctly. Then she remarked that when she noticed them arriving at her palace, she did not notice a special flag on the carriage. After hearing this, the man wanted to explain the situation properly so that there would be no misunderstandings between them. So the woman decided to listen to him after all. Also now, after some time, she got to know the girl well, and now she knew that she loved the girl very much and that her husband did not like it very much. Meanwhile, she recalled their first meeting, and also about other people who were completely against having a new girl in their house. After some time, at the Marquise's request, she finally agreed, because she realized that she needed to maintain good friendships with him. The woman understood who they would have to deal with, so she was convinced that her daughter had to treat the new family member normally now. After a while, when she started a very sensitive topic for her husband, he quickly jumped in and wanted to know how she knew all this. In response, she tried to remain silent, so she decided to stand up as well and clearly emphasize that she was not to blame for these situations and did not have to tell him anything. When she began to hear very strange words in her direction, she was convinced that she would not listen to her husband from now on. After she saw that he was not going to listen to her, she decided to use her strength, which she had quite a lot of. After these words, the man now sat quietly and did not want to say anything to her because he realized that he could do nothing. The girl continued to realize that she was fully alive, but the bad dreams did not leave her head, and it only made her feel worse. She realized that she was now a child and never wanted to go to bed again, because life was only bad for her. The girl decided that she needed to calm her emotions, and after a while she managed to fall asleep. As soon as one man went into this room, he noticed a girl who was sleeping peacefully and not touching anyone. He decided to lean closer to her, and then noticed the girl's eyes start to open, and he realized that he had woken her up. A second later, when she noticed at least some normal support, she quickly bent down into the guy's arms and did not want to get off them. Later, he began to apologize for his actions because he realized that the girl had no control over her emotions and was simply afraid of a stranger. As she looked at the small man, she realized that during all this time, none of the adults had even tried to please her. Then the man decided to introduce himself normally, and also emphasized several times that he loved the children very much and did not intend to offend anyone. While she was unable to eat, everyone around her just admired how beautifully she ate everything. But since the girl had just woken up, it was not advisable for her to eat heavy food. Everyone simply forgot that Leslie was still a baby and should not have been fed such foods, even though she liked them, and they were very tasty. But the man still could not calm down, because he wanted to do the best for the child who had slept for 4 days. As soon as she heard this, she couldn't believe that she had slept for 4 days, but now she realized that this was why she felt so weak. She immediately thought of her family, who had to look for her to reach their goal, but she could only think about what they could do to get her back. It seemed to her that everyone around her was not as angry as at home, so she decided to ask them some questions. The man didn't even hesitate to tell her that her wife had just broken the girl's entire family's spines, and only later realized that he shouldn't have said that to the child. Then the young man emphasized that he would be careful next time, and wanted her to forget all the words she had just heard from the man. He said that his father was a mercenary, and from time to time he could say some pretty bad words that you didn't have to pay attention to. With all his might, the young man tried to tell the girl everything normally, and most importantly, that no one had broken anything. He wanted her to know that while she was sleeping well, the Marquis of Sperato had come to take her away. When the princess paid a visit to the girl's father, he realized that he could take his daughter back, and therefore made a fuss at the gate. He even brought along professional kidnappers who could help him. But when they arrived, the princess was at home, and they could not even imagine how it could have ended for them. In a moment, all the men were lying down and could not get up, and the princess immediately warned the girl's father that next time she would simply break his neck. After what she heard, she even dropped her spoon. No one had ever defended her before, so it was just incredible for her, and the father could not believe that the men decided to attack his wife without first learning about her strength. For the girl, her father once seemed big, strong, and scary. She knew for sure that it was impossible to cope with someone like him. But the princess's son immediately explained to Leslie that his mother did not like it when the estate was noisy. Meanwhile, the girl began to laugh out loud because she was the only one who had left her home and already realized that the terrible Marquis was no longer a threat to her and she did not have to be afraid of him. But the young man knew that now she needed to take her medicine first and get back to resting. In fact, everyone could not get enough of the little girl and did not leave her for a moment. They even showed her a new room that was now just for her. She liked everything so much that she couldn't even get overjoyed, as no one had ever taken such care of her. Very soon she was introduced to the maid Metal, who was to take care of her from that moment on. While everyone was busy with the little girl, the man decided to pay a little attention to his wife, because he realized that all day she had been dealing with the girl's problems. Later he told me that he talked to Leslie and liked her a lot, but at first he didn't know how to behave with her since he had only had boyfriends. They decided that Leslie would become their daughter from that moment on, but the princess emphasized that this was the reason why they could have had big problems, especially with the adoption. She said that the Marquis tried to quickly cover up all traces of violence against Leslie, and that there was no evidence at all. and then he decided that he could appeal to the emperor to send him to the front line, and there he could break his neck. The next day, Leslie looked like a little princess. She just happily came to breakfast where everyone was very happy to see her. Her older brother immediately began to help her sit up, and generally liked to pay attention to his adopted younger sister. She could not believe that all this was for her. Everyone around her was kind and friendly. Leslie understood that they all wanted only the best for her, but it was a little embarrassing that they tried to order things and even buy a chair. In the meantime, she decided that they needed to eat fast and grow fast so that they wouldn't have to spend money on a new chair. But the princess was even pleased to do something for the little girl, because she realized what a difficult childhood she had. After the kids had eaten, they decided to ask permission to go to the city center, because that's where they had never been before. But so that she would not be alone there, the princess ordered that Bertrand also join her. Soon after, her father decided to join them, so the company made Leslie very happy. Immediately after they finished breakfast, the assistant said that the princess had guests who were already waiting for her. While her parents were doing their own thing, her younger brother decided to pick her up and show her to her older brother. But she was very surprised when she saw another young man standing next to her brother, and it even seemed like she had seen him somewhere before. And when he returned, she realized that it was in the church when she fell that he helped her. Then Leslie immediately began to ask about the boy, and learned that the empire was divided into 4 parts. The imperial family, the Altera family, in which royal blood flowed, the Salvatore family, and the 3 marquises. But she also realized from her brother that the books were not always correct. He also said that in the Alter family, children were actually born with strong magic. After finishing their conversations, they decided to start packing and head to the city. But as soon as they turned around, they saw the young men who had been on the street only a moment before. As soon as the brother called the girl a name he didn't like, the other one immediately hit him on the head and told him to think about what he was saying next time. He was very hurt and at the same time ashamed of his behavior, but he could do nothing. Leslie was a little shy when she saw her friend, and he was very happy to see her again. The young man said that he was about to leave their estate, but found out that the princess had a guest whom he wanted to get to know better. He introduced himself as the eldest son of the Altera family, Conrad Alpe Altera, and wanted to hear her name as well. The girl realized that it would be very rude of her, but still she did not want to admit who she really was. Her eyes were full of sadness because of the whole situation, but she was only happy that they would be able to meet again. When it came to the other brother, Bertrand said that he was holding their little sister. As soon as she saw the pancakes in front of her, she could never have imagined that they could be so beautiful and delicious. But it was a little lonely to eat. It was then that her brother informed her that he had not been able to take a day off and spend a day with her, but promised to do so next time. She was holding on with all her might and didn't think she should be even a little lonely, because she hadn't been adopted yet and was actually there under contract. Leslie signed a contract with the princess to survive, not to become a daughter, but everyone around her was very kind to her. Even though she wanted to act very nice, she realized that she could never be a real daughter to them. At that moment, all her thoughts were that Sir Bertrand had promised to take her to the city the next day, so she decided to wait for that beautiful day. But her peace was disturbed by another foster brother who did not like her presence in his house. He even knew that his mother was going to adopt someone, but he didn't understand why it was from the Sperato family. At some point, he caught himself thinking that he was speaking loudly enough that she might even cry. He kept looking at her and seemed to be drilling her with his gaze. Then she admitted that she had asked the princess to adopt her, and offered a deal to which the woman agreed. The young man simply did not believe that such a small girl could even know that it was possible to make deals with adults. She also emphasized that the princess did not give her consent to disclose all this, so she could only say that she would soon become his mother's daughter. As he looked at her, he kept thinking that this child was simply fearless to decide to come to his mother. But looking into her eyes, it was clear that she was used to fear. Anger, humiliation, ridicule. She had definitely dealt with all of this. But the son did not understand at all why his mother did this, because everyone knew who the Sperato family was. As soon as evening came, the girl was getting ready for bed, but while she was looking out the window, she decided to ask what it could mean when people touched each other with their fingers. Then her maid explained that there might have been a promise to each other that needed to be fulfilled as soon as possible. All this meant that the very next day, Sir Bertrand would take her to the city to show her around. The maid did not mind at all that the young lady asked her questions and she could answer them calmly. I also wanted the girl to understand that the contract was likely to be signed by adults and that children were crossing their fingers. Since the girl was not yet ready to go to bed, she tried to look out the window at the street for a while longer, and the maid offered to bring hot chocolate. But Leslie didn't know what hot chocolate was. She had never tasted it, so it was just a strange thing for her. When the nanny explained everything well, she was very happy, but asked that they drink it together. In the corridor, the nanny was met by a princess who wanted to know how little Leslie was feeling. Then she said that the child did not know what it meant to cross her fingers, what hot chocolate was, and when the girl was brought pancakes, she had never seen such a beautiful dish before. But in addition to the strange behavior, the maid thought that Leslie was too old for her age, as many children do not behave like this at all. The princess understood all this and knew that the child had her own reasons for all this, and therefore wanted everyone to take good care of the girl. After preparing the most delicious drink, the maid immediately noticed that the child was already exhausted and fell asleep sweetly on a chair in front of the window. The next morning, as soon as she opened her eyes, she immediately went to the window to admire the view from her room. She was actually doing well. She just couldn't wait to go to the city and wanted help getting ready. Very soon, her brother appeared before her, ready to fulfill his promise. He immediately took her in his arms and noticed that she was wearing a fur coat that his brother had worn when he was 10 years old. But it was the smallest clothes they could find. As soon as she heard this, she realized that she was very small for her age, and it scared her. Her brother immediately reassured her that, since she was a girl, it was really normal, so she didn't need to worry so much. She listened to him very carefully and even decided that one day she would be able to become as tall as her princess. He was just delighted with this sweet little girl. He liked just everything about her, and therefore enjoyed spending time with her. The whole time they were driving to the city, Leslie was looking out the window. This was the best thing for her to do. She felt that when she looked out the window, she could breathe easier. Meanwhile, not all of the maids were fond of the little lady, and while she was away, they could talk about her a little. The other maid could not believe that Nanny Leslie had told their princess everything. After all, the most important rule in their estate is to keep quiet and speak only on business. The princess always despised loud and dirty things, and she could quickly get rid of what annoyed her the most. Therefore, the nanny admitted that she was very afraid of the princess, and tried to do everything she was asked to do. Since it wasn't far to the city, the little girl's assistant decided that they should have breakfast. The girl was excited when she heard about the hot chocolate, which she did not have time to drink in the evening because she fell asleep quickly. As soon as they got out of the carriage, the little girl could not believe that she had seen everything with her own eyes. First, they went to a big store where they had to buy a lot of things for the girl, because she didn't really have anything suitable. The man immediately started writing down that he needed to bring shirts, pants, gloves, all winter clothes, and much more. First, the woman decided to look at what was in stock, and they were ready to order everything else from the catalog. While the assistant was busy choosing clothes for the little lady, her brother was trying to feed her. Very soon, Leslie appeared in front of them in a very beautiful winter outfit. She looked like an angel, and she was happy with everything. They picked out the most beautiful outfit for her that was available and were happy that the child was just delighted with it. While everyone was still choosing clothes, the girl decided to look around a bit and find a ladies' restroom. But at that moment, someone grabbed her arm, and when Leslie turned around, she realized it was her sister. The girl started yelling at her and did not understand what she was doing in such an expensive store. The sister pushed the little girl against the wall with all her might and tried to clarify her relationship with her. She believed that this boutique was famous for being reserved for exclusive families, so she decided that she would have to go to another store next time. The girl realized that her sister was angry with her because she dared to visit the same store with her. When they were still living together at the Sperato estate, Ayla never allowed anyone to come close to her room. That's why Ali came to the store so early that day to meet no one there, which meant that the marquee was in big trouble. She usually did this later and with a designer. But the reason was precisely that rumors had spread everywhere about the marquis that the princess had broken his arm. The sister decided that the little girl knew all about it and even arranged it on purpose, even asking the princess to break her father's arm. The girl realized that everyone in her family hadn't really changed a bit and continued to blame her for all their sins. She was well aware that if she hadn't been thrown into that fire for Ellie's sake, she might have had to live her whole life with them and dream of loving herself. But her sister could not control her actions even in the store, and was constantly pulling at her to take responsibility for what happened to her father. She believed that it was Leslie's fault that their parents were going through such suffering at that moment. The mother did not even leave her room at all. The little lady was able to push her away and remind her that they had been starving her all her life. She was not allowed to leave the house, and many other things. But Ali still kept blaming Leslie for being born with this hair color, and no one asked her to be born with the destiny of being sacrificed. The girl was convinced that if the baby had been born with golden hair and green eyes, everything could have been completely different. Looking at her sister with wide eyes, she knew that she was just lying, so she decided to go to her family. She was immediately met by an assistant and escorted to the hall where her brother and maid were waiting for her. As soon as she got to her brother, he told her that he had heard that Ruenti had tried to intimidate her in the dining room. This was strange to her because she hadn't felt any fear at all. She tried to reassure him that she didn't really feel afraid or anything like that. She also believed that if he hated her for sure, there would have been hostility in his eyes that she didn't see. Then he emphasized that after all the fittings, they still had to look at other stores, so he wanted her to have something to eat. They were immediately joined by the nanny, whose eyes were just running away after she looked through the catalogs with the beauty that was there. Everyone was very pleased that they did such a good job and that the little lady liked everything, and she didn't even want to take off her new shoes. Suddenly, she saw a storefront window with a pile of children's toys. Her brother couldn't pass by and invite Leslie to look in. He knew very well that no one had ever bought her anything or pleased her with anything, so he wanted to make her feel good. He insisted that she choose whatever she wanted and whatever she liked. But she believed that there was no need to be tired at all, and so her brother had no choice but to buy the entire store for her. The young man emphasized that if Salvatore left the store without buying anything, unpleasant rumors could spread about him and someone could doubt their family's wealth. He didn't want to explain or listen to anything else, so he ordered everything to be packed for him. It was at that moment that the girl changed her mind and wanted just one black little bunny, so that she wouldn't have to buy all the toys. Now she had a new friend, and her brother really wanted her to always turn to him if she wanted something. After such a hard day, they decided to feed her some goodies, and her brother just couldn't get enough of how happy she was. He couldn't believe that a piece of cake, a cup of hot chocolate, and one toy could make her so happy. When he looked at Leslie, he could not even imagine what the Marquess could have done to this innocent child. The nanny also offered the kids to try different cookies, and of course they didn't mind. Taking one cookie, she planted it carefully in the cup and wanted Sir Bethrian to notice it. She thought it was just unrealistically beautiful. Once at home, before going to bed, Leslie asked the nanny not to tell anyone that she had been upset during the day and had cried. The nanny was very worried about the baby and did not want her to open the windows herself every morning when she woke up to avoid catching a cold. It was the first toy in her life. She could never have imagined that she would have such a thing in her life. She gently picked him up and brought him to the edge of the bed. She really wanted her magic to meet a new friend. Hugging him tightly, she was very grateful that she had been born with such a power of darkness, and most importantly, that she had survived. Leslie remembered everyone who had helped her in this, and so she decided that one day she would definitely put an end to the Marquis of Sperato. It would be a gift for all the dead children he had abused. The next morning she went to the great hall for breakfast and immediately met her second brother. Their entire large family gathered around the table and tried to have a quiet breakfast, and then the princess announced that Ruenti would have to take Leslie to the library. The girl was supposed to start school that day. She heard that when her things were ready, she would have to learn how to use a sword. The princess was very worried about her safety. The woman really wanted Leslie to learn everything she could, and she also believed that this would be her strength. As soon as she had eaten well, she even asked for hot chocolate, which has now become her favorite, and of course, cookies, which the maid offered to put in the cup. Leslie was very afraid to put the cookie in the cup because she realized that it could happen again. So she decided that she would just watch until they sank to the bottom. But everything was fine, and the cookies were floating on top, not even planning to dissolve. Everyone was very happy to see that the child was also happy. It was as if the snowman was sailing a boat in the depths of the snow. Before that, all the cooks and maids had tried to do all this with cookies many times to surprise the girl. And yet they succeeded. It took the girl only 30 seconds to show everyone, and then she could safely eat cookies and drink chocolate. Everyone was very happy that their girl was happy and clapped their hands. Her joy was overwhelming that she was able to plant a snowman and it didn't melt. But only one person did not like it, and it was Leslie's older brother. He was tired of the fact that everyone in the estate was hanging around only one little girl. A little later, the girl realized that it probably didn't look good to be so happy about one cookie, but everyone clapped and it was a lot of fun. Very soon they met in the library and the young man immediately showed her all the subjects they would have to study with him. She was very grateful for his attention and wanted him to take care of her. But the young man thought it was a little too much, that she was bowing down to him like that. Leslie had to come there 3 times on Sundays at the appointed time. As soon as she looked around, she realized that they would be studying ancient language, history, philosophy, and even etiquette. He was also aware that the girl was possessed by darkness, but he knew nothing about it, as her family had been hiding it for several years. It was decided to teach her to read in the ancient language for now, and then we could deal with everything else. But she was very surprised when he put a pile of books in front of her that were taller than she was. He tried to talk to her like an adult and thought that Leslie understood everything, but he knew that all this was rarely done in the academy. In general, the boy could not understand how someone from the Sperado family could join their family. Just the thought of what they had done made everyone checkmate. It was very strange for him that, apart from his parents, the girl could even attract his brother's attention, but he decided that he would definitely never forget what her family had done. As soon as he said all this, he hoped that she would refuse right away and realized that she would definitely not be able to handle it all. Then Leslie said that she read all the theories up to the middle and stopped because her brother said that they were difficult for her. As for the history of the continent, she studied everything up to the Fourth Empire. He simply could not believe what he was hearing. For him, it was simply not possible that a child of that age could know all this. She immediately remembered being beaten if she gave the wrong answers, but now she hoped that her brother would be different from her previous tutor. Very soon they started discussing the book she had read. He was over the moon when he realized that the girl had indeed read about one of the most underrated philosophers, but that not many people were actually familiar with his theories. The philosopher was always strange. His views were not typical at all, and only those who were like him could understand his theories. The guy happily held her hands and told her that this was his favorite professor, and he could never have imagined that he would ever find a like-minded person. At her age, she knew the ancient language and the sacred language, and even the history before the birth of the fourth story, so one might think that the girl was a real genius. A little later, she learned that many of the academy's graduates had only basic knowledge, and most of them didn't even finish reading important books because as nobles, they simply didn't need to. Now she knew for sure that her knowledge would be more than enough for this, and she had to continue to work hard. When he looked at her, he knew for sure that the girl had to cope with everything, but now he wanted to see a little bit of her strength control. But suddenly he realized that he had started to fall for her charming face, just like everyone else, and it began to scare him very much. He realized that if he got caught, then their home would be over. But the girl still continued to talk about what she had read and what she liked, and he could not avoid listening to her. And then I was still angry with myself and tried to stop my body from succumbing to her spell. Before, he had no opportunity to discuss this with anyone at all, and now that he has, he tries to restrain himself. Later, Leslie reached out to him and wanted to tell him that she was looking forward to their next lessons. When it became clear that she was familiar with the theories, Ruenti decided that it was time to move on to practice. He still had to understand how Leslie could use her power. After all, her mother had said that it was the girl who could cover the entire estate with her darkness. Now she was faced with the task of covering only one room with darkness, and of course she managed it. The young man simply could not believe that this was happening to him. Now it was clear what kind of power had been helping the girl's family for 1,000 years. For him, it was clear why his mother accepted this child, because she was just incredibly strong. My brother was so excited that he couldn't help but praise Leslie, and then offered to show her how else she could control her power. Although he didn't know much about all her abilities, he was sure that she was strong, and so he set her the task of learning to control her power properly. When he put a few pieces of wood in front of her, he told her to break them, and of course she did it well, although Leslie was a little scared that something had gone wrong. She now knew that people whose abilities were very strong usually had some difficulty managing their power, but it was known that some people could better control their abilities in certain situations, and so they had to work with that. They continued to work. Leslie tried again and again to do everything he asked her to do. Soon their lesson came to an end, and the boy decided that it was really enough for that moment since the girl had done such a good job. Trying to console her, her brother told her that even magicians who had been practicing for a year had problems with controlling their powers, so she didn't need to worry that she wasn't doing well. It could take many magicians a long time to perfect all the exercises, and if they were not geniuses, it would take more than 1 year. At that moment, he realized that the source of her problems was stamina, and that it could only be maintained when a person ate well and slept well. He really enjoyed working with her, even though he tried not to show it. At the end of the lesson, he even emphasized that she could trust him. Meanwhile, the princess was busy with the person who leaked all the information, but refused to admit it and emphasized that he was innocent. But the princess was determined to hear only the truth, and only then could she send him to the Lord without any suffering. Very quickly, with the help of magic, they dealt with their enemy. Everything turned out to be very quick and easy indeed. But then they found out that the man had been poisoned, and that it had been several days, not just one day. It was known that the deceased man was Parona Ten, a native of the north, and he had served the prince for about 4 years. He had no family, but he did a good job. He was confident, but a bit tactless. He could not distinguish well between what he could have and what he could not have, especially since he had managed to betray the princess's family. The landlady's assistant was sure that the deceased had not visited a doctor, even though he was in pain and in a bad way. He seemed to have an optimistic personality. As soon as they found out everything, the princess turned to her son and ordered him to find out everything about their enemy and who was behind him. And since it was very cold underground in winter, they all decided to go upstairs and continue looking for their real enemy. While everyone was busy with important things, the young man told the girl about different magicians and everything related to them. Realizing that she might be hungry, he immediately offered her a sandwich. As soon as she had a little refreshment, she was ready to continue asking questions. It was then that he explained that the imperial family believed that the Salvatore family could outdo them, and therefore did not like the princess's family very much. The snake with 2 heads was the coat of arms of the imperial family. One head held the sun in its mouth and the other the moon. Her brother kept trying to tell her that the imperial family was so arrogant that they wanted to take over the entire sky. One could only imagine how annoyed they were with the princess, whose house was more influential. Now she knew that the Salvatore family had existed before the empire and that its abilities had not disappeared, but rather had become even stronger. But with such strength and character as in the princess's house, it was not very difficult to resist everything that was coming at them. After listening carefully, Leslie did not understand why they were treated this way, because she thought they were kind and definitely not the monsters they were imagined to be. She had never even thought that the imperial family could dislike the Salvatore family, but it turned out that this was not always the case. Suddenly their conversation was interrupted by a servant who brought news from their mother, whom they had to visit without delay. After they seemed to become friends, her brother did not want her to address him so formally, but Leslie could not do otherwise, as she was not yet part of their family. With a smile on his face, he said that they just had to wait a little longer, and she would become the youngest in their house. Now he knelt before her and was happy to greet her as his little sister. Even when they went to his mother's house, he carried her in his arms and continued to tell her stories. So I thought that if the darkness didn't get out of hand, they would be better off, but just in case, I had to prepare for everything in advance. But first I had to meet with my mother, and then decide on everything else. At first he went in first and left the little girl outside the door. I took this opportunity to tell him that I had come to consider Leslie a true genius. It even seemed to him that the girl was as intelligent as the graduates of the academy, and was also exceptionally good at ancient languages and philosophy. But I knew that she only lacked knowledge in all other subjects, and her intellect was a bit specific. Looking at her, one could even decide that she lived all the time in a cave and had absolutely no knowledge of the outside world. It was clear from her that she had no pride, and it was clear that she had been abused all her life. The princess immediately recalled the first time she came to their estate as a child, and was actually pleased with it. In fact, the mother knew that they must have liked each other, because the girl also liked the philosopher Nirokia. This drove her son into a frenzy. A little upset, he realized that he should have been warned from the very beginning, but the princess, of course, had the last word.